As a practical matter, everyone that wants to go into the Sundarbans usually starts out in Calcutta. They have to drive down to the docks near the Sundarbans, pick up a boat, and see the Sundarbans by boat. Boat's the only practical way of seeing the Sundarbans. This is the Sundarbans Park headquarters. Um, it's got some exhibits there, and of course this is where you pay your fees and get registered and so forth. But the thing that's most striking about it, it is surrounded by a very large, very high fence. That fence, of course, is to keep the tigers out. After getting the formalities out of the way, the thing that you do usually is you float up and down the canals that go between the various Sundarban islands, looking to see if you can possibly find something. Now you can't get too close to the shore. If you get within 20 feet, a tiger could jump on board. Now your chances of seeing any particular wildlife is dependent in part on the tides. If the tide is high, it means the mudflats are covered with water, and the water goes all the way back up into the jungly areas of the islands. If that's the case, you're unlikely to see anything, because anything is going to be so far back into the jungle, even a few inches back into the jungle, that you couldn't possibly see it, although the tiger could possibly see you. When the tide goes down a little bit, you're going to be more likely to see the mud flats, and there you'll see things like crop roots and new roots coming up out of the soil. Birds, deer, and boar are fairly common to be seen, and it's entirely possible you'll see a fairly wide variety of other animals. However, the Sundarbans is not as populated, or at least as densely populated as it was just a few years ago. A few years ago there was a cyclone that came through here, and you can read that as hurricane if you like. And it reduced some of the population pretty significantly. There used to be a fair number of king cobras back in here, but those were substantially reduced, and you're far less likely to see a king cobra now than you were used to. Since, as you see, both mom and the baby are spotted, it makes sense that these deer are called spotted deer. Now, mom is walking the way that she is because she's trying to tell the kid that there's a certain amount of danger out there, and I'm sure she's talking about us. One of the other things that you'll notice as you float around the Sundarbans Islands is that there are tens of miles of nylon mesh fencing up along the edge of the high water mark. These fences are probably about 10 or 15 feet tall, and they're intended to discourage the tigers from leaping out into the water and taking some fishermen off the boats, as they do from time to time. Here we see another spotted deer. Keep in mind that I'm on a boat, and it's very hard to keep the camera steady and on target. Next is more of that fencing that I told you about. It goes on for about 50 miles or so, and it's not really intended to keep tigers out of areas. It's intended to discourage them. The fact of the matter is, if a tiger wants to go through this fence, it's going through the fence, or over the fence, or around the fence, or under the fence. And that's true for the lodges that are in the Sundarbans area as well. Those lodges are all fenced, but you probably don't want to do a lot of wandering around at night, even in your lodge area. The reason is because tigers do wander through there from time to time. Now here's something that you don't see very often, at least not in this weather in the Sundarbans. The weather here may be as much as 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and the result is the crocs are all in the water and they're very hard to see. This is a small saltwater crocodile, the same kind that they have in northern Australia. This next is the old man. I asked the guide how large he was, and the guide said 9 feet. But that croc is not 9 feet. It's at least a good 12 feet. For every additional foot a crocodile grows in length, it roughly doubles its weight. That means that there's a huge difference between a 9-foot crocodile and a 12-foot crocodile. And this one could have actually been larger. In addition to crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles in this neighborhood, in the waters you can also find sharks and several different kinds of dolphin. including the fairly rare Irrawaddy dolphin. Late last year, there was an oil spill in the Sundarbans, the part of the Sundarbans which is Bangladeshi. And there was considerable concern that this was going to affect the wildlife. About 90,000 gallons of crude oil was dumped in an area where there's a special reserve for freshwater dolphins. There are two kinds of freshwater dolphins in this area, a Ganges dolphin and an Irrawaddy dolphin. Now, both of those are quite endangered. One of the things that naturally draws your attention in the Sundarbans is anything that's moving on the mud flats. And one of the things that you run into with fair regularity are mud skippers. These are fish. They live mostly in the water, but they frequently come up on land. They carry a small amount of water with them that is oxygenated and flop around and look for food and such. They're very curious with their eyes on the top of their head. In any event, one of the things that you find there is the mud skipper. We went to those freshwater lakes several times in order to see what animals were out there. Of course, we were looking for tigers, but tigers are very rarely seen. And almost all the animals eventually go there, and you can see that they've cleared out lanes through the jungle so that from time to time you can spot animals that are moving from one section to another. This is a monitor lizard. Among the other animals that come frequently to drink water include, of course, the spotted deer, which we've seen several times already. Because this is such a good location for seeing animals, we visited it more than once. The last day that I was in the Sundarbans, we had an opportunity to visit here again, but it was near the end of the day, and I was disinclined to see more spotted deer. And so I told my guide, no, we'll go on back to the lodge. About 15 minutes after we left, the tiger was spotted at this location, and we hurried back to see it. But of course, by the time we got back there, the tiger was already long gone.